it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network on a day that feels like late August or early September, Pierre McGuire. And I'm Jimmy Murphy here on the Eye Test. Some great weather we've been having here in the Northeast. I'll take it. Almost like playoff weather, Pierre. That's the way
that's what I thought of today when I was out working out. It felt like playoff weather. I'm not kidding. Yeah. The only difference is the trees still have leaves on them here in Massachusetts, so the colors are a little different. But yeah, no, that's a really good comparison. I agree with that, Jimmy.
I wouldn't mind watching some playoff hockey right now, but we've got plenty of games to go until that, and we'll discuss the games last night and the games ahead. But we want to tell everyone right now, you want to stay tuned right now. Don't leave, because we have a great guest coming up. One of the best general managers, in my opinion, in NHL history, 4 Stanley Cup rings, Ken Holland. He was a GM last of the Edmonton Oilers and, of course, with the Detroit Red Wings. He will be joining us to celebrate the career of Pavel Datsyuk, who will be going into the Hockey Hall of Fame this weekend, where Pierre will be. Of course, Pierre was part of the committee that selected Pavel to be inducted. And Pierre, I think when people think, 2 words come to me when I think of Pavel Datsyuk. One is magic, because of the moves he would pull off and his stick handling and the way he could handle that puck and pass and shoot, whatever. And the other one would be steal. And not just because he could steal the puck a lot on the ice, but because he may be the best steal ever in the history of the NHL draft, Pierre.
That's a good way to look at it. Pavel Datsyuk was 171st in his draft year in 1998. The Red Wings took Yuri Fisher 25th, and Yuri was a really good player. He had a major health scare on the bench, so that ended his career, but he's still working for the Red Wings as a college scout and a player development coach. But when you think about, Pavel Datsyuk, you just talked about stealing. I called him once on the air the king of kleptomania. I've never seen a guy steal the puck more than Pavel Datsyuk. And when you think about it, okay, so he goes in 98 at 171. Henrik Zetterberg went at 210 the next year, okay, in 1999. Listen to their career stats for a second. Pavel Datsyuk, 953 games played, 314 goals, 604 assists, 918 points, plus 249. Wait, this is Zetterberg. Zetterberg played 1,082 games, so a little over 100 plus games more than Datsyuk. 337 goals, 623 assists, 960 points. Remember, Datsyuk 918, he's 960, and he's a plus 160. So think about what the Red Wings did in 98. They got a guy at 171. In 99, they get a guy at 210. But when Kenny Holland comes on, and this is the magic of Kenny and the Red Wings, the thing that turned everybody says the 83 draft, Yzerman at number 4. Yzerman at number 4. No. The 89 draft in Detroit blew everybody up. Sillinger went 11th. Bobby Bugner went 32nd. Lidstrom, Nicky, went 53rd. Fedorov went 74. Dallas Drake went 116. So hear me out. Of all those players that I just said, everybody played over 1,000 games except for Bobby Bugner, who played 630, and they traded him away. Wow. So you just think about it for a second. Think about that. 11, 32, 53, 74, 116. They all hit. Jeez. That's crazy, dude. Trust me. That's crazy stuff.
What a lesson that teaches about drafting too, Pierre. And you scouted so many times. You were on the road so much. I mean, when you're a scout and you have a GM like that that's going to listen to you, what does it mean? Because obviously he said, I trust you guys, but I want you to dig deep. I want you to get out there. I want you to go in the middle of nowhere, wherever you have to go. I want you to find guys. And whether they're highly ranked or not, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe in you. What does that mean when you're a scout to have a GM like that?
I love the question. It means a lot. Craig Patrick was like that. When I worked for Craig, he trusted his scouts. He trusted some more than others, but I'm sure Kenny's the same way. And the biggest thing, Jimmy, is Craig had a scouting background and Kenny had a scouting background.
That matters huge.
So when you come from that milieu, you are not afraid to trust guys because you know what they're going through. You know how they've lived. You've been in their shoes. You've taken that long drive from Medicine Hat over to Brandon. You've taken that drive at night from North Bay, Ontario to Sudbury. You've done that drive from Avon Oil Farms up to New Hampton Prep in New Hampshire. You've done all these things. You know what the guys are going through.
Yep.
So you appreciate what they've done in their careers, and you respect what they do.
And of course, he had one heck of a scout over in Sweden by the name of Hackett Anderson. I'm sure we'll talk about him in a bit with Kenny. But before we get to Ken, let's just talk about some news around the NHL. And I think right now the biggest trending story, as they like to say on the social media platforms, the Philadelphia Flyers, Pierre, are scratching rookie sensation Matvei Michkov against the Lightning tonight. Your take on that?
I haven't been around their practices. I haven't been around their games. It's obviously a pretty significant adjustment for the kid, not just athletically, but language-wise, living-wise, time zone travel-wise, frequency of the games. It's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
John would know. John would know exactly with his staff why he would do this.
Right.
If it becomes a trend where you're seeing it, let's just say he misses 4 straight or 3 straight games, and you start to worry. But I would probably say this is probably one and done. And sometimes it's better to be up top when you're watching because everything's slower, and you sit with a coach up there when you're that guy, and they say, what would you have done here? What would you have thought of here? What could you do there? And it helps the player because everything slows down a lot.
I'm not going to say the names of the players or the coach, but one time, Pierre, and I didn't know if this was kosher. I didn't want to be in the middle of it, but I did value him coming to me. But I had a coach come to me one time and ask me about a guy that was scratched and what he was doing in the press box. Was he buried in his phone, Murph, or was he watching a game? Was he taking notes? Was he talking to people nonstop? What was he doing? Was he paying attention? And I said, I don't really want. He goes, it didn't come from you. And so, I said, actually, he was pretty zoned into the game. I saw people come up to him and he kind of brushed him away, and he would wait until the intermission, then go talk. But it stunned me. And I always remember that. And I always since then have kept an eye on players when they are a healthy scratch. And for all the reasons you just said, because it is a learning experience. It's a different perspective up there. It slows the game down for them. You see patterns develop on the ice, systems develop, and what works and what doesn't. And so it can be a learning experience. And, that's what Tortorella said when he addressed the media today. He says, hey, this can help any player if you go up there. It's not necessarily a punishment.
No, I don't think it's a punishment at all. I think it helps kids a lot. Now, some people will view it as that. Here's one thing. If you're going to do that, and I know some of the older hockey people are going to say, come on, you got to be kidding. You better make sure you get in touch with the agent. Mm-hmm. You explain to the agent. And it's not always a GM that has to do that. It should be the coach.
Yep. With
the GM's blessing, you say to the agent, look, here's why he's sitting out. Don't worry, he's going back in because the agent can take the temperature down. If you don't, and let's just say you sit the kid out another couple games, then the agent has the ability to use this.
Yep.
And then it can become a problem. Then it can become a problem.
Oh yeah.
So I can tell you that wasn't the case when I was coaching because these things didn't exist. I was just at the beginning of the BlackBerry. So
the BlackBerry.
Now you got to be really careful when you do it.
Yep. I got to say too, the one thing. Look, you can agree or disagree with it. That's your take. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah.
But there's, as we discussed, I think it was yesterday, we were just talking about how this new wave of fans always want the young guys to play. And that was sort of what I saw as the general reaction. Like, how dare you bench a young player like that? You're going to crush him. And how dare you do this? You're going to ruin his development and this. And pump the brakes. It just slow down. I don't care if you're Wayne Gretzky or you're the last guy ever drafted in the draft. Everyone is, open to criticism. Everyone, the coach can say, hey, you're not playing well right now. That's his job. Or you could do this better. You could do this better. And I just think there's this weird sense of like some players are off limits. And I get it. Maybe Wayne Gretzky's an extreme, but when you're young, that doesn't mean you're off limits. That actually means you're very on limits because I think you want to learn. You should want to learn, and it should be a learning experience.
One of the best parts about hockey, the passion of the fans. I've said that a million times. Right. I keep saying it till the day that I no longer can speak. I'm just telling you, the passion of the fans is amazing. because it tracks into the building.
Yep.
It tracks into the series. It tracks into a game. It makes a difference. The passion of the fans. One of the biggest problems, though, that we've had recently, I'm not saying forever, but for recent times, this stuff, and you're my social media guy, people start to take stuff personal. And I'm just telling you, in hockey, once you start taking stuff, I know people say bad stuff about me. I get it. It's okay. They're entitled to their opinion. Am I going to be mad at them? What can I do? I can't do it. The people that write that, I don't even know them.
Yep.
I wish I did, but I don't know them. But I'm just telling you, this is one of the things that managers like Kenny Holland have had to deal with over the last 7 to 10 years. The influence of social media and how it can affect not only organizational decisions, but players' psyches. I'm just telling you, Jimmy, like if you're in a big market, like Kenny was in Detroit and Kenny was in Edmonton, those are major markets for hockey. Some of those young guys got to be protected, Jimmy. I'm just telling you. And if they're not, you could have a big problem.
Well, we can talk to Ken Holland about that and much more, specifically Pavel Datsyuk, because he is joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network right now. Ken Holland, how are you, my friend?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Great to have you. Thank you.
Nice to be with you guys.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good. Long time no see, Pierre.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. Am I coming in clear?
Clear as a bell.
Great. You're great.
Good.
Where are you?
Jimmy, I'm going to say where he is right now. I'm going to bet money he's in Penticton, British Columbia, or in that vicinity. I don't want to give away the town, but you're in that vicinity, Ken.
You got that right. Yeah.
Jimmy, I've been to Kenny's home, and I won't say the town, but I'm telling you, it is a spectacular place.
Yeah, everywhere up there is beautiful. How's the weather up there, Kenny?
+7 today, probably 45 degrees. Pretty nice.
Too bad.
And he's already played 18, and he's going to go play another 18.
Actually, Pierre, I just got back from Phoenix last night. I was there for 4 days. I played 8 rounds in 5 days. It was wonderful. I got to do something to kill my time. I'm unemployed.
Well, you should be employed, my friend. Hey, Kenny, listen, we asked you on because we want to talk about an amazing player that you were part of drafting, and he did so much for your team, Pavel Datsyuk, going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. What does this mean to you to see him get this honor?
Well, it's well-deserving. Pav, I think, was one of the best centermen, two-way centermen of his era. I was just looking today from 05, 06, coming out of the work stoppage when he really was in his prime at 25 years old. He was basically a point-a-game player for the next 10 years. I think over that 10-year span, he was plus 200 or just a bit more. And our team made the playoffs every year. So he was a great two-way player. He had a couple of 87-point seasons, a couple of 97-point seasons. I think, what did he win? Four Selkies and 6 Lady Bings or something.
Three Selkies and 4 Lady Bings. You got it, Kenny. Your brain's still working.
Yeah. So I mean, he up front. He and Henrik Zetterberg really drove our team. Obviously, at that time, coming out of the work stoppage, we still had Nick Lidstrom, but certainly Pavel Datsyuk was one of the best two-way centermen in the world for at least a decade.
Kenny, how do you explain the number 171 on him? Drafted in the 171st position. How do you explain that, Kenny?
You know, I remember the draft, and Håkan Andersson's really the guy responsible for him being drafted by the Red Wings. And Håkan had drafted, Thomas Holmstrom and some other players late in the round. And when Thomas come on and kind of tapped on either Jimmy Nils or my shoulder, we listened. It was like E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton talks, we listen. So, Pav come in and Håkan come in and was tapping our shoulder. I got this centerman over in Russia. We like him. We like him. We obviously picked Pav, and then he came over to our development camp. We sent him back to Russia for I think for another year or two. And then I remember his first contract. We signed him to a 2-year contract. The first year, his agent, Gary Greenstein, and I agreed that if Pav came over and we were going to send him to the American Hockey League, we would send him back to Russia. He didn't want to play in the American League. And a couple of days into training camp, that was the 01-02 season when we won our Stanley Cup in 02. It became pretty obvious that Pav wasn't going back to Russia. Really centered our third line in 01-02 for the next 2-3 years. And then as the Yzermans and the Shanahans and Fedorovs and those players left, he really took the mantle, like I said, along with Henrik Zetterberg, and really carried our team. But great drafting. by Hawk and Anderson in the late rounds. You know, if you're going to have a good team, you got to be good at you're good for a long time. You got to be good at the draft, and certainly Hawk and Anderson knocked it out of the park in the later rounds a number of times for us.
Ken, we were just talking about, you know, when a GM was a scout himself, got a start in scouting, it helps a lot. How much did your roots in scouting help and build the relationship with Hawken?
Well, I think really, I mean, that was my roots. It started in 1985, 86. Jim Devellano hired me as the Western scout for the Detroit Red Wings, and I was a Western scout for 4 years, and I was a chief scout for 5 years and the assistant manager for 3 years, but ran the draft. So for 12 years, you know, I was out on the beat, watching amateur players. The guy that's really responsible for Hawken being a Red Wing was Nick Polano. Nick was the assistant general manager. I was the chief scout. Nick was going over to Europe, and somebody had tipped Nick off that we should hire Hawken. I ended up spending a lot of time the next 2 or 3 years with Hawken, going over, and Hawken and I would, you know, go to games and have breakfast and talk about what my philosophies of looking for a player. But ultimately, I think Hawken, as a scout, he just had that, you know, he just, after a little bit of experience, he sort of had that gut instinct of what it took to play in the National Hockey League. And he built up some relationships over in Europe, people that he trusted that were coaches and evaluators over there from national programs. And he was responsible for guys like Zetterberg, Johan Franzen, Hawken Anderson, Johan Franzen, and obviously Pavel Datsyuk, and being Thomas Holmstrom in being Detroit Red Wings, and obviously those players were critical to the success of the Red Wings from the late 90s through to mid 2015-16s.
Well, you talked about Henrik Zetterberg, Kenny, and you don't have Datsyuk without Zetterberg. You don't have Zetterberg without Datsyuk. Probably one of the best tandems we've seen in the NHL for a long time. Kenny, what's amazing to me, 210th, and I just did it for Jimmy before you came on. If you look at their career stats, one guy played over 1,000 games, one guy was a little less than 1,000 games. Their numbers are almost identical, Kenny. I mean, I know you had Yzerman, I know you had Shanahan, I know you had Fedorov, I know you had all these guys. Did you ever have two players that were so like those two guys?
No, Pierre, you nailed it. They were amazing players, and they could play together. Z could play on left wing, Pav could play at center. So Mike Babcock, as the coach, could put them together. He could break them apart. Zetterberg could center the one line, Pav could center another line. And you know what, Pierre, you've been around the National Hockey League a long time. It's one thing to be a good player in the National Hockey League, but they carried a franchise around, and I don't believe we missed the playoffs the entire time Pavel Datsyuk was a Red Wing. So it's not only that they carried the franchise and they were on the team. You know, we won the President's Trophy in 05, 06. We lost in the Final Four in 07. We won the Cup in 08. We lost in 09, Game 7 to Pittsburgh. In 010, we lost in the second round to somebody in San Jose. In 011, we lost the second round. So you're talking about a team that had lots of regular season success, lots of playoff success, and Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg were the two guys up front that carried us. And like you said, they were both a point-a-game player. But the difference between them, in my opinion, and a lot of other players, was their commitment to defense. Not only were they a point-a-game players on the offense, I think they were a point-a-game players on the defense. They did they killed penalties. They were in the face-off circle taking draws. Late in the game, if you're down by a goal, they're on the ice to try to score the goal. If you're up by a goal, they're on the ice protecting a lead. Those types of players are really hard to find, and really that's the reason why the Red Wings were able to make the playoffs 25 years in a row. We had all those great players in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Russian Five, Fedorov and Larionov and Yzerman and Shanahan. And then as their time come and gone, Lidstrom was there for another decade. Pavel and Henrik Zetterberg grabbed the mantle and carried it from 05, 06 till we missed the playoffs. I think in 16, 17, the Red Wings were the last team to miss the playoffs in a salary cap world. So those two guys, but certainly we're talking about Pav. They did the heavy lifting for for our team over a decade. They played against the other team's best players. They were on in the power play. They were on the penalty killing. They were on the last minute when you were down by a goal. They were in the last minute when you're up by a goal. And certainly, like I said, Pav was, in my opinion, the best two-way center of his era.
Jimmy, before you ask a question, I want to ask the GM something, because I was part of the group that nominated and voted for Kenny to get in the Hall of Fame. And not enough people know that Kenny is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And he was one of the few guys that got in while he was still working. That's an amazing accomplishment. Kenny, the 1989 draft, it's a year before I went to work in Pittsburgh. I know you were the chief scout in Detroit. I think that's the draft, Kenny, that set Detroit up for all the success you're alluding to, the 25 straight years of playoffs. So I'm going to give you the numbers. Sillinger went at 11. He played for the Regina Pats. Bugner played in Sault Ste. Marie. He went 32. Lidstrom played in Västerås in Sweden. So I don't know how much you were over there, but I think you were over there a lot. Legit Fedorov was 74. Dallas Trake at 116 from Northern Michigan. Kenny, you did all those. There's only one guy that didn't play 1,000 games in that list. It's Bugner, and you traded him away. And Bobby's a friend of mine. You traded him away. Kenny, this is an amazing accomplishment that never gets talked about.
Yeah.
Now, Pierre, I wasn't the chief scout. Neil Smith was the chief scout, but Neil Smith and I worked in tandem. I remember going with Neil and I went to Alaska that year at the World Junior, and Anchorage, Alaska, and the Russians had a line of Pavel Bure. It was
McGillney, Bure, and Fedorov.
Yes.
Bure, and Fedorov.
I'd never seen anything like it. And in that draft, an interesting story, we took Fedorov in the 4th round. And actually, we had a philosophical conversation with Jim Devellana, who was the manager. Remember, at the January meetings and then at the May meetings. We'd come back from the World Junior, and Neil and I told Jimmy D that, Fedorov was a great talent, could play in the NHL right now. But he was, he was a Russian. He was communist. You didn't know if you'd ever get your hands on him. And we decided, and that's a credit to Jim Devellano as the manager. He said, you know what? Let's draft one or two of these guys, tuck them away. And if we don't get them for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we still own their rights. Then fast forward to May, Steve Yzerman goes to the World Championships, represents Canada. He comes home. Jimmy D has lunch with Steve Yzerman, and he says, is there anybody over there, any good players over there? And Steve says to Jimmy D, boy, there's this fabulous young Russian center iceman that I played against. I think he's about 19 years old. His name is Fedorov. And Jimmy said to Steve, well, how good is he? And Steve said, well, he might be as good as me, but pretty close. So Jimmy D kind of dovetailed what Neil Smith and Ken Holland were telling him, watching the World Junior and watching the Russians play. And then he tied it in with Steve Yzerman. So we got to the draft. We ended up taking, like you said, Lidstrom in the 3rd round, Fedorov in the 4th round. And we were taking Pavel Bure in the 5th round, but he had only played, they had him as playing 7 games in the Russian Elite League. And there was a rule back then, if you played in Europe, you had to have played 9 games in the men's league to be eligible for all rounds of the draft. So, or you're only eligible for 3 rounds. So Neil Smith went up and asked, I think Gil Stein, who was at that time the legal counsel of the National Hockey League, we're thinking of taking Pavel Bure in our next pick. And Gil said to Neil, if you take him, it's an eligible pick. Neil came back to the table and said, we can't take him. It's an ineligible pick. So we ended up taking somebody else. And then for the next, Krister Rockstrom, who was our European scout at the time, spent the next hour, 45 minutes of that entire 5th round convincing Neil and Jimmy D that and the staff that we should. He said, I know he played for 2 games for Russia, the Red Army, out in Siberia. Nobody knew, very few people knew about it. So we were all set to take Pavel Bure with the next pick, and 2 picks before us, Vancouver Canucks picked Pavel Bure, and they proved what, because the year later, and Pierre, you were around, a year later, about 4 days before the draft, the NHL announced that Pavel Bure rights were owned by the Vancouver Canucks. So we were within a whisker of having Bure and Fedorov. That would have been, but we did get Vladimir Konstantinov also in that draft in the 11th round. So we got Konstantinov and Fedorov and Lidstrom and Dallas Drake. I think we got 6 NHL players out of that draft. And you added that 98-89 draft to Steve Yzerman, and 2 or 3 years later, we had Yzerman and Fedorov up front. We had Lidstrom and Konstantinov in the back end, and we really had the foundation that took us for the next 10 years that we won the Cups with in 97, 98, and 2002.
Jimmy, just before you get going, Kenny's story is awesome. That draft in 1990, the next year, that was in Vancouver in the football stadium, and they took Keith Primo with the 3rd pick overall. We got Yager at 5. And what I remember is they did announce that, and I think if it wasn't in Vancouver, Kenny, I'm not sure they ever would have announced that. But the guy that was the brains behind that one, and Kenny knows, was Brian Burke. Brian Burke fought like hell with Pat Quinn. He says, "We're taking this guy, and I can prove it legally." And you know how Burke is. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah. And then over the next, then after that '89 draft, about a month later, Neil Smith left to go to the New York Rangers to be the general manager. And then the next 3 or 4 drafts when I was chief scout, we added players like Primo, Marty Lapointe, Chris Osgood. Trying to think, there's 2 or 3 others. Kozlov, Primo, Kozlov in the 3rd round.
Chris Osgood
in the 3rd round a couple of years later. Darren McCarty. So over the next 3 years, we added Darren McCarty, Marty Lapointe, Chris Osgood, Slava Kozlov, Keith Primo to Yzerman, Fedorov, Lidstrom, and Konstantinov, and then fabulous decision by Scotty Bowman in 1995 to acquire Igor Larionov and put the Russian 5 together, and then bring this back to Pavel Datsyuk. When we brought Pavel Datsyuk over, and I was the general manager, I thought it was important to keep Igor Larionov. I think Igor was about 40. But Igor turned out to be a role model and a mentor and a coach. Pavel couldn't speak English. And I would, I sat at the front of the bus. So let's say we're on a road, we're going to the airport, and about 3 rows behind me, Igor and Pavel sat together, and you could hear them talking Russian the entire time. So Igor was coaching, talking to him, making him feel comfortable to Pav. And certainly, it's really important, I think, for young players to have role models and mentors and veteran players, and that's what Larionov, the Russian 5, Yzerman did for Zetterberg and Datsyuk. They showed them how to be good pros, and that's why they could take the mantle from those players and kind of carry us for the next decade.
Speaking of taking the mantle, you mentioned Scotty Bowman. If you just go back to when he first came over and the way he started to take you guys to the next level, I know you got swept in 95, but then 96, you get to the conference final, and then finally in 97, you do it. Talk about that period, Kenny.
Well, Scotty came in, and actually in 94, his first year, we lost in 7 games to San Jose. We had we were like 35 points more than them. And at that time we did a 2-3-2. So we played 2 games at home. We played 3 games in. It's the last time anybody did that. We lost games where the series was 2-2. You'd like to be coming home. And we played game 5. We lost game 5 out there. We come home, we won game 6. And then Scotty Bowman had a lot of influence. And Scotty started to there was no general manager. It really was Scotty Bowman was the head coach and director of player personnel. Jim Devellano was the senior vice president. He negotiated the contracts, did all the business. And I was the guy that ran the farm team, ran the draft, built the Adirondack Red Wings, and the 3 of us worked together. And, so after we lost in 1994 in the first round, I think he did the Shanahan deal. We ended up trading, I think, was it Paul Coffey in a first-round pick and Primo to Hartford to bring in Shanahan. And then sometime in there, we also acquired Igor Larionov. He traded to acquire Igor Larionov. And then I remember in 1996 or 97 at the trade deadline, Scotty traded, I'm running the amateur draft, and Scotty traded a 3rd-round pick to New Jersey for Slava Fetisov, a 35 or 36-year-old Russian defenseman who was in the press box in New Jersey. And I thought, holy cow, we're trading 3rd-round picks for 35 or 36 years old. Meanwhile, Scotty was a genius. A year later, he puts together, I think the first night the Russian 5 played together was in Calgary.
Yep.
And we were on the road. I think Calgary had like 12 or 13 shots. We won like 4-0. They had the puck the entire night. And that really was the beginning of our team. What ended up happening was we had the grind line, Draper, McCarty, Maltby, and they would practice every day with the Russian 5, and the Russians played keep away. And pretty soon all our players played the way you play today. You hung on to the puck, because back then it was north-south. You'd get it in, you'd flip it in, you'd chase it. And then our checkers. So if you were playing against the other teams, Colorado, and they had, their star players, Forsberg and Sakic, our checkers, when they got the puck, they hung on to the puck. They made the other team's best players spend oxygen trying to check rather than just going and flipping in and giving the puck away. And certainly Scotty was with Scotty's brilliance and vision to bring in guys, Slava Fetisov, Igor Larionov, to put them together had a massive impact on the Detroit Red Wings. And obviously Scotty come into town, and Pierre knows he started flashing those rings in the locker room. And if you were a player, you had to listen. I mean, he had all the rings. He'd won those 4 or 5 cups in Montreal. He had the rings from Pittsburgh. He'd taken the St. Louis Blues, an expansion team, to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row. He knew how to win. He knew how to build a team. And then remember in '96. Our guys had drafted a defenseman late in the 11th or 12th round. Scotty traded him to Pierre would remember his name, to Edmonton for Kirk Maltby.
Danny McGillis.
Thank you, Pierre. And acquiring McGillis, we acquired
Draper for $1.
Draper for $1 from Winnipeg for $1. And we had drafted McCarty in the second round, and all of a sudden McCarty, Maltby, and Draper became a checking line and a grind line, and they pitched in, and Draper killed penalties, Maltby killed penalties. McCarty could fight. They gave us between McCarty, Shanahan. That was a time when you had to have some toughness. McCarty, Shanahan, Lapointe. There was 1 or 2 others. They could drop their gloves, and where we were comfortable playing finesse hockey. We were comfortable playing hard hockey and physicality and dropping the gloves, and that really was probably. And then bringing it again. Pavel Datsyuk came in 01. We won the cups in '97, '98. We got over the hump. And then Pavel helped us win the cup in 02. He was the third line center. It was the 2 kids in the old goat, Brett Hull, Henrik Zetterberg, and Pavel Datsyuk. And then, like I said, in 05, 06, all those, the Hulls, the Shanahans, the Yzermans, the Fedorovs. Yzerman was there in 05, 06, the first year, and then they took the team. Pav took the team, and Henrik Zetterberg, and we were able to kind of go to the Final Four in 07, win the Cup in 08, and lose game in 09, Game 7, 2-1 to Pittsburgh.
Pierre?
Jimmy, we're going to let Kenny go because I know he's got to get ready to practice some more golf. Kenny, it's been an amazing life in hockey. I don't think you're done. I hope you're back sooner rather than later. I hope you're going to be in Toronto to celebrate Pav's induction.
I'll be there.
One of your other Red Wing guys is going in too, Colin Campbell. Don't forget Colin there too.
And David Poyle, obviously, who I've had a relationship for a long time. I can't wait to get there this weekend and celebrate.
I look forward to seeing you there too, Kenny. But here's Jimmy. I just want Kenny to hear this before he goes. Kenny Holland was an amazing goalie for the Medicine Hat Tigers. I'm not kidding you. He was a really good teammate. But you talk about scouting excellence and brilliance and managing excellence and brilliance. That's him. And that's why he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Kenny, this was so nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Kenny. Thanks, you so much. Hope to see you on the soon.
Okay. See you guys on the road.
Take care. See you later, Kenny. Bye.
That's good. Legendary general manager Ken Holland joining us, and he should be back in the game soon. Pierre.
Oh, he will be. There's some guys like I don't get Ray Shero. Ray Shero's got to be back in there. Kenny Holland's got to be back in there. I know everybody's got these newfangled ideologies. Do you hear what that guy like? Try to find that. Try to buy that experience.
I know, and what's great, Pierre, is I was thinking about it, and I think I didn't want to jump in there at the end, but what I wanted to ask him was, you look at the teams that win in the salary cap era, right? And a lot of them have the traits that he instituted into his teams even before the salary cap era. And that translated into a new era. So it just shows you how smart he was, how much he knew the game. And I think it's amazing. Like having 2 players like that, like Zetterberg and Datsyuk. Look at the cup winners. Most cup winners today have to have 2 players like that they can depend on.
Their whole thing changed when egos went out the door, including some of the best players, because they got humbled by San Jose. But when it was Scotty, Jimmy Devellano, and Kenny, everybody knew their lane. Kenny knew his lane.
I loved when he was talking about that. Yeah.
Jimmy knew his lane, and Scotty knew his lane. And that was it. And, you know how much I talked to Scotty. Look, I was coaching the league then. It didn't matter. We were allowed to talk to each other. And there was never any vitriol towards one member of the management team or the other. They were singing from the same songbook.
It's amazing.
And, you know, that doesn't happen a lot in this league.
No.
Everybody's really, I can tell you this. Most people in the league are very territorial, and they're very insecure because obviously it's high stakes.
Yep.
And everybody wants to make sure that they're looking after their own self. I get it. Kenny, the first time I met Kenny was on the road. I'm going to say it may have been in Medicine Hat. It may have been in Regina. It was somewhere out west. It's the first time I met him. And I told Scotty when he got the job, I said, this guy's a really good scout. Like, we've had a lot of really good discussions on the road, and I trust him. Like, I think he's a really good scout. And Scotty called me, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, and he said, that guy's a really good scout. And he's a really good hockey person. And they had an affinity for one another, and it really worked well. It was phenomenal.
That's great.
And Jimmy D, Jimmy D's business acumen was really solid. And so they were in that thing big time. And they had, you know, it can be argued, Jimmy. I'm not saying they're better than Montreal was in the 70s or the 50s, but you can make the argument from 95 to 2008, the Detroit Red Wings were as good as any team in the history of the National Hockey League. You can make the argument. I didn't say they were, but you can make the argument that they were.
Well, I look at it, Pierre, and they didn't, you know, they still had way more turnover. But I look at that, I'm listening to him describe going through the years of that dynasty and how it translated, as I just said, into the Cap era too. And I'm thinking about the Patriots because I obviously saw that for the last 20 years here. But when I look more at what the Red Wings did compared to the Patriots, it impresses me a bit more just because of the fact that Cap came in and really had to keep changing. They had to keep changing and adapting to the times, but they somehow kept their, I don't know what the word is, like they kept it steady right through. And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's fair. One of the things you got to do if you're going to have that, Pittsburgh had it. You had Mario and you had Sid. You got to have an upper echelon group of players that can survive that long and produce at the same level. Yzerman was a phenom. And what people forget, in the 2002 Olympics, I was there. I was doing the games. Yzerman got hurt. Yzerman was hurt, and he was playing on one leg.
I remember that.
He totally changed how he played. He went from an offensive player to a penalty killer, a shot blocker. It was phenomenal to watch. But all that changed, and I'm not telling tales out of school, so I'm very comfortable saying this. After they lost to San Jose, Scotty called Steve Yzerman in. I'm not going to give you all the permutations of the conversation, but I'm just going to say Scotty challenged them. It could have gone one of two ways.
Yep.
It could have gone, I'm buying in, and I'm going to do what you're telling me. Or, you know what, I'm going to do what a lot of other star players in the league do. I'm going to get you out of here.
Yep.
Because I'm plugged in with the owner, and I'm plugged in with the GM, and I'm plugged in with the president. Yzerman, to his credit, never did that.
Yeah.
He never did that.
Team guy.
Well, he realized the way they were doing it was wrong.
Yeah.
So there had to be some buy-in. Yep. And the buy-in started the next year. They went to the final. They got swept by New Jersey, but they went to the final. So they had to lose to learn how to win. They had never been that deep. And then all of a sudden, it started. And the machine started. And it was amazingly impressive. Amazingly impressive.
Amazing stuff. Well, switching gears here, Pierre, because I want to get to our Q&A too. Just outside of 2 weeks, going to the Friendship Four in Belfast. And tomorrow, Pierre, we are going to have a Friendship Four connected guest. Merrimack College head coach Scott Borak will be joining us here on the eye test. You want to tune in for that. Really looking forward to that, Pierre. And I bet Kenny would like going to the Friendship Four, huh?
Kenny is Jimmy. Like, again, you can tell the listeners or the viewers. I warned you before it started. I said he's really smart. He's got unbelievable energy. He's passionate, and he's going to make it fun. And that was a history lesson in Detroit Red Wing hockey.
A lot of our viewers were saying right here, the stories were unreal.
Yeah, but so guys like that. So he's a hockey lifer. Again, I'm so grateful. John Chap, I go down the line. All the guys that influenced me, there are hundreds of them because I'm so great. Scouts in those days, it was a fraternity.
Yep.
You weren't flying around on fancy planes. You might fly into Regina and rent a car, and you were out there for 2 weeks. or you might fly into Calgary and rent a car, or you might fly into Vancouver and rent a car, or you might fly into Toronto and rent a car. You weren't flying all over.
No.
You were flying in one spot, and then you were getting a car, and you were done. you were in the middle seat in the back. You know, I don't want to get too into it, but it taught you a lot. It taught you a lot, and it made you appreciate character.
And you can see that in him. Like,
yeah, he's got
that's what made him such a good leader, for sure.
Character.
So yeah, we're excited about that. We're just outside of 2 weeks, and we want to remind everybody, if you're going to be over there, and if not, you can still listen to us and watch us. We will be broadcasting live from the Heart Bar in downtown Belfast, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the last week in November there. And we will be in Dublin at a bar to be determined, I'm thinking, by Monday.
We're this close.
So we should hopefully have a location for you on Monday if you're in the Dublin area and you're listening and viewing. We want to meet you. Come on down and say hello, and we appreciate your support. Pierre, quickly, speaking of college hockey, it's official now. The CHL NCAA transfer rule is in effect now as of next season. Just your thoughts. I mean, we knew it was coming, but now that it's real, just your thoughts on that quickly.
The teams that are the most proactive will be the most successful. Mm-hmm. It'll be amazing for players, I think. If you're on the lower end of the food chain as a player right now, don't get nervous. There's going to be a feeling out process here. But I think it's going to be great for major junior players. It's going to be great for colleges. I think it's going to be awesome for the fans because they're going to get to see even more accentuated levels of play. So I'm excited. I know I'm not going to say this on this podcast, but I know the way I would pursue it if I were back coaching college. I think the only tip I'll give is I think people need to reconfigure their staffs. Yep. How they're going to run their hockey organizations. That's going to be really important going forward.
You're going to have a bigger scouting staff, as we've discussed.
Well, not scouting. You're going to have people that have experience, because if you just send guys out all over the road, you're going to be spinning your wheels. So you got to know the areas that are going to work for you, and you got to know whether you got relationships with certain people that can do it.
Where I was going to go just now.
And what this is going to become, and this is the only thing I'll say because I don't want to give too much out. If you don't have relationships with pro agents, then you're not making it. You better get somebody that does.
Yeah, with you on that. All right, before we go to that Q&A, let's tell you about Betway. They are the leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct and go over to Betway right now. Sign up either with that QR code right in front of you if you're watching here on YouTube, or if you go to the site, you can sign up there. And remember, you must be 18 plus and play responsibly. I don't know if you want to listen to my sick pick of the day because I'm on a 3-game losing streak here, but sooner or later, everybody's due. I'm going to make it quick. Let's go to the sick pick of the day from Murph here.
It's time for Sick Picks, brought to you by Betway.
All right, Pierre, I'm going to Tampa Bay where Michkov will be watching from the press box. Michkov, will be watching from the press box, Pierre. That's the big story out of there. But I think the bigger story on the ice will be that the Flyers are just, I think free fall is too strong a word right now, but I think they definitely have come back down to earth from last season. They're not in a good space. I like this game a lot for Tampa Bay. Give me the Tampa Bay Lightning on the puck line, -1.5. You get +124 value. That is my sick pick of the day, brought to you by Betway. Let's get over to the Q&A. All right, Bill Van Vagel. Habs sent Oliver Kattman to Sweden. Would you prefer a young player to play top line minutes in a European league or fourth line in a top league in the world?
Well, first of all, he's going to Timrå, which is a good program. That's where Zetterberg came from. It's a real good program. I have no problem with him going over there and playing there. I want him dominating games. I can find North American kids that can be fourth line players. I don't need to have a guy from Finland or Sweden or Russia or Czechia. I want him to come over next year and be able to dominate the puck, to make plays, to have his speed be a factor. He's got a little taste of playing on small ice. I admire what the Canes organization has done with this. I think it's a step forward, not a step back.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, next question. Postnet on 130. Question: could a 5'8" goalie make it in today's NHL? Wolf is 6 foot, 166 pounds, and Levy 6 foot, 192 pounds, and Buffalo are considered small. It is tough today. I mean, The big goalies are in. That's it. But
I can't see a 5'8" goalie making it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think the shortest one is UC Saros right now playing in Nashville, and he's maybe 5'9.5", 5'10", and people are starting to figure him out pretty good. I asked the question with Eric Francis, who's a good friend of the show's, last year about Wolf and his size. Jimmy, you remember?
Mhm.
And, right now he's kind of splitting the net with Dan Vladar. We'll see how that goes if Wolf cements himself as a number one, whether he can hold up at 166 pounds. I'm not even sure if he's that heavy. And Devin Levi is a real good goalie. I think he's more than big enough, and they got a pretty good relationship going on there with him and Ukko-Pekka Laukkanen. So
yeah,
I don't see that being an issue. But Wolf as a starter, we'll see. It's hard. It's really hard.
It really is. There's no more goalies like my height anymore in the NHL. All right, next question. Randy Workman, do you think Trotz meant it when he threatened the Preds will do a rebuild if they continue to lose, or was that complete bluff?
You want to take it, or you want me to?
I mean, my take, and I mean, part of it is insight I got from you, Pierre, but I mean, I think, he's trying to put a scare into his team right now. He's trying to say, let's go. Let's wake up here, guys. I mean, how much patience can he have? So I think it was a move to get their attention. If they're, out of it by Christmas or New Year's, then who knows? Yeah, maybe he does. Maybe he starts selling off parts and goes into a rebuild. We'll see.
I think he was trying to get their attention as well, but I also think he wanted to tell the whole league he's open for business.
Yep.
And when you do that, you can sometimes create an auction situation, and that's if you are going to go down that road, you need to create auctions so that you're getting maximum value on players.
Yep.
And it's one thing to pick up a phone and call one GM, but if you put it out there the way he put it out there, the whole league knows you're open for business.
And what's in a few weeks, Pierre? American Thanksgiving, that time right now where they've evaluated their lineups. They're starting to look elsewhere if they need to fix some things.
Once you pass game 20, you know what you got.
Yep. There you go.
Positive or negative, you know what you got.
All right. Next question. Jason Logan. What's up, Jay? Do you think the Pens can trade Jerry for a D-man? They need help out there.
I think that's a hard one right now.
Yeah.
Chris is going to have to play. He's going to have to play better. I know he's been good in the American League. I understand that. But he's going to have to do that in the NHL.
That contract, Jay. It's just
it's a tough one. That's a tough one.
All right, next question. Steve Lash. Hey, Jimmy and Pierre. Hey, Steve. Kevin Dineen was let go yesterday by Utica after an 0-8-1 record. You don't usually see an AHL coach fired in season. You hate to see someone lose their job, but what happened? I'm not around there, so I have no idea what happened. I mean, I look at the record, so obviously that's one thing, but I don't know the ins and outs, so I can't really comment on that. But I do know, in my opinion, Kevin Dineen is a good coach, and I hope he finds work elsewhere.
He's a very good coach, number one, and he's a better person, number two. He's an awesome husband. He's a great father. His son, Will, plays at Yale University. Kevin's whole family has treated me unbelievably. I've worked with some of his brothers, and his dad, when his late father was alive and coaching in Philadelphia, I coached against him, and he always treated me with amazing respect. And his dad played in Detroit with Jordy Howie. Actually, his dad, Bill Dineen, worked with Kenny when Kenny was running Adirondack. It's ironic that we had both of them on or talk about them today. I don't know what happened there, but I know that there's a lot of pressure to develop prospects. Last year, Utica did not have a very good year. They're not flushing a lot of prospects up. I don't know because I haven't spoken to anybody involved in Jersey, but here's what I do know. Kevin Dineen's a really good hockey coach, and he's a really good person, and he's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
And so I don't like to see that happen to anybody. And I got friends on both sides. I got friends on the decision-making side, and I got friends
as do I as well. But we wish the best to Kevin if you're listening. Hang in there, my friend.
Here's one thing I'll predict right now. If Joel Quenneville goes back to coach and he wants a really good coach to work with him, I'm going to say he'll hire Kevin Dineen. If Kevin wants to do that.
Yep, Hartford-Wheeler connection right there. All right, next question. Jason Logan again. Jimmy, Pierre, when the NHL plays over in Europe for a regular season game, do they change the ice size to NHL size, or they leave it to the European size?
Some of the rinks they do, and some they don't. Some have the capability for doing it, some don't. Like when they go to Germany, it's on the big ice. In Czechia, I think a lot of times, in Finland, they have the hybrid rink in Finland.
Yep.
I think that's one of the reasons why they decided to do that. So instead of being 200 by 85, the Finnish ice is 200 by about 90 to 93. So it's the hybrid, and that's why I think they do a lot of that in Finland with the NHL teams, because I think that's kind of a good compromise.
Yep. There you go. All right. Next question. Joel Kravitz. Hey, Joel. Now that Mel has sent Kapanen to Sweden, what lies ahead for Emil Heineman, considering the status of Raphael Harvey-Pinard and Patrick Laine?
I don't think anything. Heineman's going to be there for the year.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised unless they decide that that he's not ready to do this on an everyday basis. But I don't see that being an issue. The one, to me, they brought up Condada. I was going to say Condada. Condada. He's going to play tonight for Montreal. So they brought him up. They're in New Jersey tonight. He's going to play. We'll see how he does. But I think they're leaving Joshua Roy in the minors for a reason. I think they just want him to absolutely dominate. They don't want any questions on confidence with him. And I think they really want to stabilize their team in Laval and get them, continue to play the way they are so they can play some significant playoff time this spring for their younger players.
All right, next question. Real Deal Prime. Are we witnessing history in the making with Ovi? Will he break the record? He and the Caps look like they're on a mission. Well,
Ovi scored in his last 5 games, and what I really like is the line he's on right now with Dylan Strome and Alexi Podis. That line's really good. It's fun to watch. And Ovi seems to be having a ton of fun with him, too. I was shocked that he adapted to playing on right wing the way he has. But he has. He clearly has. Is he going to break it? Yeah, he's going to break it. Hey, dirty little secret. When Gretzky broke the points, Gordie Howe's point record,
yep.
I was watching that game in Buffalo, New York in my room. Okay. And it was a late game. It was against Vancouver from LA. And I'll never forget watching that. So I'll be watching it whenever Ovi gets close, because he's obviously going to break it. Is he going to do it this year or next year? That's the question.
Yeah. And I think, too, you talk about how well he's doing right now, Pierre. It's interesting, right? Because last year was not a good year for him. Maybe arguably his worst that he's had. Like, he wasn't happy. He wasn't playing. It was tough. But I think what happened was, and this is just my guess, over the off season, I'm sure he had a lot of talks with management and coaching. I think when he saw, hey, this team around me is buying in and they like this coach and there's something here. I think once he realized, if I start to pick it up, this team's going somewhere. I think that's really revitalized him right now, because they're a young team, and he seems to be sort of feeding off that energy right now. And it's great to see.
No, I think it's great for the fans in Washington. It's really good for the people in that division in particular, whether you're in Philly or New York.
Yep.
You're in New Jersey, you're in Carolina, you get to see or Columbus or Pittsburgh, you get to see Ovechkin come in chasing the record. I think that's fantastic. I think it's awesome. Knowing the kid a long time, I can't believe, I knew he was going to be really. Scotty Bowman and I went to go watch him when he was 14 years old. He was playing on a touring team in Toronto, and we watched them play, and we were like, "Whoa, are we sure this kid's 14?" Because he was a lot better than most 14-year-olds. And then it wasn't too long after that I saw him play as a 16-year-old in the World Junior in Halifax, and they won the gold medal. They beat Canada in a very hostile environment in Halifax.
I remember that.
That guy was going to another.
Yeah.
Ovechkin played in 3 World Juniors. He played in Halifax, played in Helsinki, played in Grand Forks, North Dakota. That's not a lot of guys playing 1. He played in 3.
Yeah. Yeah. He was amazing right off the bat. All right. Well, listen, great show. Man, was Ken Holland something else, Pierre?
Oh, Kenny was great. He was so good, and he had a big thing to live up to what Keenan did yesterday.
That's right.
Keenan was really good too.
Yep. But he came in and cleaned up and did the job.
One more question.
Do we do it? One more. Let's do it. Alex B. Smith. What's up, Alex? With the recent solid player, Peter Mrazek, and major improvements from Arvid Soderblom, which guy gets moved from Chicago when Brossoit finally returns from injury? Good question.
That is such a good question.
Yep.
It's a really, really good question. If I were going to bet, probably Mrazek, just because of age.
Yep. That's what I think.
But I don't know. I don't know internally what they're thinking, because they're going to know realistically. They lost last night, obviously, to Detroit. It was a good homecoming for DeBrincat and Kane going back to Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't know what their actual plan is to continue their rebuild, but they're going to know, like you talk about U.S. Thanksgiving, they're going to have a real good idea where they are. And then I think you're going to start to see some stuff happen there.
And I think Mrazek too, we've talked about some teams that really didn't get that good, solid backup, right? Like look at Vancouver right now. They're missing DeSmith, right? A guy like Mrazek, who's got veteran experience, Pierre, will be a little more attractive, I think, to come in and be that guy. Maybe for a playoff run.
That's a smart thing to say, Jimmy. I agree with you. Here's the thing that I think is really important to talk about with Peter. He's a competitive guy. Like he's another one of those guys that's not real big, but he's a PPW guy. He's a prove people wrong guy. He really is, and he's competitive as all get out. That's one of the, you always make little notes on different players, and the one note I have on him that stands out to me is he's a PPW. He's a prove people wrong kind of a guy.
He's definitely a battler out there. We do have one more question here. Someone's asking Pierre, where was Trotz a GM before?
Barry was never a GM. Oh, maybe in the American League.
Okay.
You want to say that, but he was never a GM in the NHL.
That's right. Yeah.
But here's one thing that people need to know. David Poyle's going to the Hockey Hall of Fame. He hired Barry Trotz in Washington, and he also hired Barry Trotz in Nashville.
Yeah.
And when they got hired in Nashville, people need to know this. That's why they came out of the gate so well. Their coaching, they hired all their coaches the year before the team started on the ice. And they sent them all out scouting so they could pick the players that they wanted. I'm talking about NHL players in the expansion draft. It was a smart idea by David Poyle.
Yep.
We were one of the few teams that actually did that. And they had the backing of ownership, so they went out and did it. And I think Barry learned a lot from that process. I think he learned a ton in that. And that's why I think he's going to be a very good general manager.
Yeah. Poyle's been a great mentor to a lot of people. I mean, I just remember Pierre, was it 2 years ago when they had was it 2023? They had the draft in Nashville, and it was his last draft, and they let him do the last pick. And, Tommy Fitzgerald, who played for him, learned under him. He came up to him, gave him the shirt and everything. It was great. But everywhere I go in the hockey world, the one constant I hear about him is class. That's the word.
And he's a Northeastern University hockey player.
There you go.
Come on.
Like McGuire.
Come on.
There you go. Hey, so was, that trade we referenced there, McGillis for who? In Edmonton, we were talking with Detroit. McGillis went to Northeastern, and then he, of course, ended up with the Bruins eventually, where I covered him there. But there you go. What a show, though. Thanks to Ken Holland for joining us. We really appreciate it, Pierre. Thank you for setting it up. Thank you to our listeners and viewers, as always. Again, getting psyched for the Friendship 4. We're just over 2 weeks out. And remember, speaking of,
can you show that thing from Notre Dame?
I was just going to go to it. Don't worry, I wasn't forgetting. Just remember, tomorrow we've got head coach of Merrimack College who will be with us in Belfast. Scott Borak joining us tomorrow on Campus Friday. And as Pierre just said there, reminded me, don't worry, I didn't forget, Pierre. We will be in Belfast, as will the Notre Dame Irish. And look at this. They're starting to get psyched up. I saw this today, or Pierre sent it to me.
Right to Rust. Up the middle, Tynan trying to control a loose puck. It ends up going back for Rust, and he goes upstairs to tie the game up at 3-3.
Jim shoots. He scores. That's gonna be me someday.
Okay, I got chills. I'm pumped up now. Let's go. Can we go early? That was great. Great work by Notre Dame doing that for their hockey team, who will be over there along with Harvard and BU and Merrimack. Looking forward to that. And thanks to our producer, Shane. As always, Pierre, enjoy the hockey tonight, my friend. And got a lot of good college hockey coming up this weekend as well. So excited.
Lots of college hockey. I'm going to be watching hockey tonight with an old Harvard hockey player by the name of Alan Litchfield.
Nice. Tell Alan I say hello.
He was a leg-breaking madman when he played for the legendary Bill Cleary at Harvard. So,
great.
Player, hockey player. Talk about Jeremy Roenick going to the Hockey Hall of Fame. He and Tony Amati, Brooks Orpik, all former Thayer players. So, Alan and I will be watching a lot of hockey tonight. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it.
Give our best to Alan. Enjoy the hockey. This has been another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.